Okay, Commissioners, we're going to move on to item number 17. This is an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan. It's docket number 163864, block 1116, lot 29. It's 33 Central Park West, located within the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District, a neo-Renaissance style school building designed by Carrere and Hastings and built in 1902-04. The application is to alter areaway railings.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Carousel of Landmark staff. 33 Central Park West is a corner building with on West 63rd Street to the south and Central Park West to the east. The application is to modify the existing historic cast iron guardrails adjacent to the main building entrance on Central Park West, actually to replace the historic cast iron guardrails. And the architect is here to present the application.
Thank you. My name is Kristen Holtgrew. With me is Stephanie Dillon from Hoffman Architects, and we are the design applicant of 33 Central Park West. So I'm actually going to skip ahead to page 2 here. 33 Central Park West is located along Central Park West between West 63rd and West 64th Streets. It is home to the Ethical Culture Fieldston School, which is an elementary school on the Upper West Side. Just kind of a brief synopsis of our project. We had previously performed an assessment of the facades, the areaways, and the sub-basement vaults, and what we had found was deterioration to the structural steel elements in the sub-basement vaults. So this summer, we have work proposed to be completed at the sidewalk level and below, extending into those vaults. What we're proposing is installing waterproofing underneath the sidewalk, but in order to access, to be able to install the waterproofing, it requires removal and reinstallation of the historic guardrails. There are guardrails that currently run along the entire east and the south facade of the building. Our concern is, I think in your printout, there's a highlighted section right here, which is where the main entrance to the building is. There are 2 locations immediately to the north and immediately to the south of the main entrance, in which there are staircases that lead down to the basement. These staircases are used every day by staff to access the basement, as well as for deliveries. So basically, our obligation per the New York City Building Code is anywhere where we're performing work, we're obligated to bring that location up to the current building code. In these locations, our concern is the stair. Go back to the first page here. In locations along an open-sided walkway, if there's an elevation change of 30 inches or more, which in the location of the stairs there is, we are obligated to install a code-compliant guardrail. So there are 2 implications of that. One, that the height not be less than 42 inches, and also that the spacing of the rails does not exceed 4 inches. Currently, the guardrail that is located at those 2 staircases are short by about 8 inches. It does vary because the sidewalk is sloped, but worst case scenario, it's short by 8 inches. So I'll, draw your attention to the historic photographs. What we have here on the top are images from the 1930s, and below are current photographs that show the guardrail. Again, our proposed modifications are only to these 2 locations to the north and to the south of the main entrance. So again, the top images are sidewalk. You can start to see to the left of the sidewalk here and here. This is the elevation change that exceeds 30 inches. So we are looking to modify this guardrail right here and on the other side. top photos are basically the same. The bottom photos illustrate the historic ornamentation of the guardrail components. Okay. So these are elevations of the east facade along Central Park West. On the left, what you see in black is the existing guardrail, and in the right image is an elevation of the proposed guardrail modifications. These are enlarged elevations, the top showing existing, the bottom image showing the proposed. And then in these images, we have renderings which show the top image is both a comparison, a side-by-side comparison of the existing guardrail and our proposed solution, but this scenario also does take place. I was saying before that there are guardrails along the entire east and south facades. These will be reset, the historic guardrails will be reset. This proposal addresses how we intend to meet the 2014 building code. This design solution, I guess I should say that per our community board meeting last Thursday, we did receive some feedback. I'm going to present what we proposed, and then we can discuss any changes that were discussed at that time.
Is that what that was proposed to the community board?
This was proposed to the community board, yes. Exactly
Okay.
what we have here.
Is that the one that they supported, or they wanted, because I know they wanted some changes?
They supported it with revisions. So the revisions are not shown here.
Okay.
Since our submission was already turned in at that time. So what this solution is that this distance right here, the height, I should also point out that our proposal is for a newly fabricated, a replica of the existing. There are two reasons to do that. The first being that by removing the historic guardrail, we are able to turn it over to the owner, so that in the event in the future, if there's some reason or requirement where the historic needed to be reinstalled, it could be done. So this is a reversible proposal. And then the other reason is so that we're not actually altering the historic fabric of the building, that we are proposing an exact replica in orientation, in color, details. The only changes are that this base would be elongated to meet this 42-inch height requirement from the sidewalk to the top rail. So this proposal keeps this distance the same as this distance. And then this base is elongated. And then finally, the 4-inch spacing requirement would be met by installing stainless steel cables, anchoring them to the end posts and running them through the middle posts. So that's and then I guess the last page shows construction details for how to achieve that. Again, anchoring the cables to the end post and running through the middle posts. So at this time, I can either defer to the community board regarding the revisions, or I can discuss that with you at this time.
You've agreed to those revisions,
Yes.
isn't that correct?
Yes.
Why don't you present the revisions?
Okay. So
Yes.
The new material of the post will be cast iron?
Yes. So the revisions that were discussed, and we are in agreement with these changes, is that the height of this post base right here would be retained in the newly fabricated piece. So rather than extending this post base, we would in turn it would be the same height, and then rather we would elongate the full height of the post. The other revision that was discussed was that the ratio of this space right here to this space would be carried over, so that this distance would not appear so high. So it would be like ratio A to B would be the same as A prime to B prime. And then the third and final revision was that rather than leaving the anchors of the stainless steel cables stainless steel, we would coat the anchor pieces so that they would match, they would not be in such contrast to the end post. The cables themselves have to remain stainless steel, but we could at least coat the hardware.
Okay. Questions? Yes, Roberta.
Did you also look at raising the base height to keep the original height of the railings?
I don't know if I understand your question.
I mean, what is it? Is granite or stone or
Oh,
something?
yes, the
That
coping,
material?
the coping is granite.
So was there a way to make that, put that on something, set it on something, so that it was like higher and therefore you could use your existing
The existing granite,
railings, the height they were?
I think I see what you're saying.
It's like you're talking about increasing the height of the curb, right?
Yes. Yes.
They are integrated into the sidewalk right now, so I believe the concern is that if we, even if we put some kind of blocking to raise that coping up, then the bottom would be exposed. Like there needs to be a sufficient anchorage into the sidewalk structure, so we'd be adding a non-historic element in order to raise the coping.
Okay, other questions? Okay, we'll take testimony. Sean Corsandi?
This is Sean Corsandi from Landmark West. Good afternoon, Chair Srinivasan and Commissioners. Ensuring that our city's built environment is safe for all demographics, especially young children, is of paramount importance and certainly something city agencies should not take lightly. That being said, our committee considers the current proposal to be unacceptable for this purpose and believes the applicant can do better in this crucial part of Central Park West treated appropriately while maintaining a safe environment for those who use it. The Commission should reject the proposed thin stainless steel wires as they often fail after a few years when they sag and snap, especially when so inviting for young school-aged children to climb, as evidenced by the 3 photographs of recently installed steel cables at the Olmsted Center in Queens, provided to you by one of our C of A members. Furthermore, we cannot accept them since the reason for being is the removal of the original cast iron railing, a proposed replacement for which would have openings that could disproportionately high in relation to their existing. This uninspired and inappropriate approach, more expected in a .com headquarters than a neo-Renaissance school on Central Park West, could set bad precedent for upgrades to the historic railings that need to be brought to city code regulations. We recommend instead to retain the original railing in situ and install a continuous tempered glass barrier that would meet the 42-inch requirement directly behind it. There could be a bronze fitting, which would become non-reflective as it weathers and never rust, with an anti-electrolysis gasket, all in glass behind the rail by 1.5 inches. This would be more cost-effective and aesthetically pleasing of a solution. If a glass barrier will truly be, as maintenance crew claims, maintenance nightmare, why are so many new buildings made of glass? It is possible to meet health and safety regulations while maintaining the historic integrity of our city's built fabric. This proposal simply needs to push further the envelope to obtain a more creative and practical solution. Thank you.
Can I just ask you a question? Are you suggesting the glass is incorporated into the existing railing?
I'm saying it be put behind it in lieu of cable wires.
Thanks. Are there any more speakers on this item? Okay, we've got Community
one
Board
more.
7's recommend. I'm sorry,
one
I
more,
didn't
yeah.
see you, Kelly.
No,
Sorry.
it's okay. I didn't put in a sheet. Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. Our committee was just wanted the applicant to clarify if this was absolutely necessary through building code, because you keep repeating 2014 building code, and I imagine there are a number of buildings in New York City that are not up to 2014 building code, and so we wish to see that clarified, and if it isn't absolutely necessary, just like a lot of egress issues, then to just leave it alone, and as it's lovely as it is. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more speakers? All right, Community Board 7 recommends approval based on the, I guess, their recommendations to you that you were willing to accept, and the approved new railings as modified. All right, so if you could just, yes, address the issue of code.
I will address both of those points. First, regarding the code issue, because we are doing work in these locations, we are required, we're removing the existing guardrail, as well as doing work underneath the sidewalk. We are required to bring those locations up to code. So it is required. It is also a safety issue since, regardless of the age of the people that use the building, it is required. But in this particular case, that our client has expressed concern because of the age of the children that are constantly around the area. So I hope I addressed that point. The other one regarding the materiality of the proposed solution, I guess first I'd like to talk about the cables. I'm not exactly sure the other scenarios that were proposed, but or that were discussed in your points, but we are obligated also to meet the strength requirements of any guardrail that is installed. So we would be putting in our specifications that the guardrail is subject to meet the intended loads to be put upon it, which should allow these to withstand that kind of abuse, I guess. We had considered a glass railing alternative. The issue is that because of the location, this is a widely used space, and we were concerned about graffiti and etchings on the glass, which may detract from the look of it more so than these cables, which they're 5/32 of an inch in diameter. So our goal was that this be as least visually intrusive as possible. As far as setting back, we have looked at some alternatives to setting a guardrail behind this. The issue with that is that anchorage would need to take place into the historic coping stone, which is granite. Our concern was that puncturing anchors into that could lead to cracking or spalling of the historic coping stone, which would be very difficult to replace. The other thing is that there would be an intrusion into the walkway. Any anchor posts, we feared that would become kind of I don't know, what do we call that? Where it's subject to someone hitting their arm or their head on the post for that.
Is the number of cables that you have running across horizontally, is that also driven by code?
The spacing is.
The spacing is?
The spacing is 4-inch maximum. However, many manufacturers require even less than that to meet the force requirements put on the guardrail. So the particular manufacturer that we looked at, it was actually 3 inches maximum. So they'd be a little bit closer together than required.
Okay. All right. Other questions for the applicant? Any other questions? Okay, why don't we move into discussion then? I think this is one of those situations where it's about safety, and I think that, we're put in a very sort of awkward position because this is historic. And I would say for myself, I have concerns with the idea of having this railing that's historic and then having something behind it and making it look somewhat makeshift. I think their approach to taking out the historic fabric, perhaps saving it somewhere else, and casting something which is essentially similar and akin to what you have right now, and adjusting for the heights, I would say is appropriate. And I think that that with the community board suggestions, which I think were very well intentioned and sensitive, I think it actually improves it much more from the original proposal to us. So I think I could support this. Yes, Fred.
I would agree. There's a place for replication, and then there's often, depending on your philosophy, a place to not replicate. This is a place to replicate, but replication with a slight change because of code and safety conditions. I think the reversibility issue is good. It's a philosophical issue here. I can't imagine this being reversed as long as it's a school with those stairs going down. And I just want to respond to the idea from testimony that a glass rail behind it. Glass is hardly invisible. Glass with its reflections and so forth is quite visible, and I would say much more of an intrusive idea here with this ensemble. And I can't even imagine what the glass would look like these days after our past 6 weeks of winter weather without daily washing. So I think this is a good solution, actually.
Right. Other comments?
Yes.
Yes, Michael.
The other thing I would add is that I agree that with everything you said, and Fred, but I do know these cable rails, they don't last well. And even if they pass the test, they're based on these turnbuckle assemblies usually, and they fail over time. So I would say that maybe just do it with rods.
Yeah.
Fire shutters fail over time.
Yeah, it's true.
Keep up.
Yeah.
These with kids climbing up on them though, I think it. Yeah, I think that I'd say you could do the same design and they could do it with staff just with rods instead of stainless.
I agree. And what is the diameter that you're proposing on these?
It's 5/32 in diameter, so they're very.
Yeah, they're so thin that one day you'll be told, we'll hear that they're dangerous because they've cut someone, which is the way what I think about them anyway. I just think it may be to work with rods, but in a slightly different plane. So if there's a way to have them not be coplanar with the heavy piping, and then maybe if it's slightly behind, then that will lend some kind of depth or texture, but also minimize the look of their dimension.
All right, why don't we suggest they work with staff on this? That makes sense. And look at if there's the alternative of a rod, and also, or provide better information about its maintenance if they continue to use the cable. Okay? All right, so we had already closed the hearing. Kim, can you read that, please? Thanks.
In the matter of 33 Central Park West, a neo-Renaissance style school building designed by Carrier and Hastings. Application is to alter areaway railings. It goes on. Okay. Staff recommends approval, finding. I recommend, I'm sorry. I recommend approval, finding that replacing the existing cast iron guardrails with new cast iron guardrails with taller posts and using stainless steel cables or rods to meet the code requirements will not disrupt the overall design or symmetry of the facade. That the proposed alterations will be limited to locations adjacent to the main building entrance with other historical railings to be retained at the building. And that, given the large scale of the building, the changes to the railings will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of this individual landmark. However, that the work will...
I think that's...
we should go on?
Second. Staff will work
Yes.
with staff on the material and.
However, the applicant will work with staff
Yes,
on the
sorry.
materials and placement. Thank you.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this application's been approved.